Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Emily.
And today we're going to do another different video for you today. We are going to be talking about werewolves in film.
Yes.
We have been talking a lot about vampires. We are going to be talking about something, our other favorite topic, vampire musicals, later on in 15 Days of Halloween. But we haven't really discussed werewolves, and we started filming Werewolf the Apocalypse, which is another part of World of Darkness, and we thought, why not give some love to these other, I think, underrated creatures in horror movies.
They are kind of underrated, aren't they?
They are. There aren't many good werewolf movies. I did find a few in my research here, but it feels like people are mostly focused on zombies or vampires lately.
Yes, and if you can see me doing stuff... It's because Amanda requested that I try and get creative today.
Yeah, Emily's going to be doing her own little werewolf transformation during this video, so hopefully if you're bored by me, at least you'll be entertained by her.
Don't say that.
Yeah, hopefully you'll be intellectually and visually entertained here. All right, so let's get started. A theme that I want everyone to keep in mind here is that werewolves can represent a theme of you losing self-control, identity, anxiety, or releasing just sort of a primal urge that exists in all humans. So those are just some things that we want to discuss, or that are probably going to come up today. But the first thing I want to talk about is how werewolfism is tied very distinctly to Native American lore, especially, I believe, in American movies. So let's just get this out of the way. Twilight.
Get it out of the way.
Just get it out of the way. They have got the Native Americans in Twilight transform into werewolves, and that's just example number one. But the very first werewolf movie ever made was called The Werewolf. It is a silent film from 1913. Unfortunately, this film is lost forever because it was burned in a fire.
When?
So, I don't know when the fire happened, but I believe it was a fire at Universal Studios, so a lot of films were lost.
That actually happened recently within the music world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of master records were lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was done before it could have been digitized or saved anywhere, so there is nothing left of this film except some promotional posters. But The Werewolf is based on a short story. It is about a Native American woman. She marries a colonist, a white settler. She has his child, but then his brother drives her off, and she is abandoned by her husband, or she believes she is abandoned by her husband, and raises their daughter to despise white men, essentially. So years go by, the daughter grows up, and she falls in love with a young man from her own tribe. Another white settler comes along, sees her in the woods, and kills her beloved.
Why?
Because he wants her for himself. So, and then in the whole scuffle, her village is destroyed. She transforms into a wolf and just runs off into the woods. And years later into the future, the reincarnation of the man who killed her fiancé is out in the woods with his fiancé, his own love interest, and they come across this wolf. She attacks him and she attacks his fiancé, and kills her, and thus her revenge is satisfied. That was the very first werewolf movie. Another werewolf movie that isn't quite a traditional werewolf movie, but is still classified as one, is Wolfen. This takes place in New York City, and there are no werewolves in the traditional sense. The wolves are the spirit of the spirits that are protecting this native ground that is under attack. So they are... It's a sort of neo-noir mystery movie, actually. It follows this detective who's following this series of murders and trying to figure out what the root cause of it all is. And he discovers that the spirit of these wolf spirits are attacking this real estate developer and anyone who is trying to desecrate this native land. So the only way to appease them is just to destroy everything that this real estate developer was trying to create, just to prove to them that no one is going to touch their land anymore. There are no actual werewolf transformations, but it is classified as a werewolf movie. But it's more wolf spirits than actual people transforming. Next one is I want to talk about Skinwalkers. And this is actually where talking about werewolves as Native American lore became a bit of a sticking point for me. But I'll get to that in a minute. The movie Skinwalkers, it's about these different groups of werewolves. They're classified as werewolves, but in the movie they're called Skinwalkers.
Mm-hmm.
There is an evil group who revels in their animal nature. They just enjoy being werewolves. They enjoy consuming human flesh. They enjoy just their transformation in their animal side. And then there are the good ones who chain themselves up every full moon. They try to control themselves and control their animal bestial nature.
like in What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh yes, like What We Do in the Shadows.
They're like, any clothes you want to keep, we'll take them.
Yes, so there is a legend. The movie starts off with according to Navajo legend, and I want to clarify that the people in this movie are mostly white. But according to Navajo legend, a 13-year-old will end the curse of the Skinwalkers, meaning that he will cure the evil Skinwalkers.
Does it have to be a boy?
Yeah, it has a 13-year-old boy, according to legend. But yes, this 13-year-old boy, turns out his father is, again, major spoilers, but this is a, older movie, so it's fine. Turns out his father is the leader of the evil werewolves. His mother is human. And his blood apparently cures the evil werewolves of their evil tendencies. So the movie ends with them going around with the boy, and they are going to treat people with evil werewolfism.
How do they determine what's evil and what's not?
The evil werewolves, you are evil if you consume human flesh.
Ah.
That will change your nature from good to evil.
Ah.
Yes. But now I want to actually talk about the actual Skinwalker legend, and this is considered a taboo subject among the Navajo people, so I'll be keeping this very brief, mostly just talking about the distinction between werewolves and Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers are not werewolves. I just want to make that point very clear, because I've seen people, especially when they talk about American cryptids, they will equate the Beast of Bray Road, which is in Wisconsin, or the Michigan Dogman to Skinwalkers. They'll say, oh, they're probably a Native American Skinwalker. No. Native American Skinwalker is part of Navajo legend, and as we know from our time in Michigan, the Ottawa people live in Michigan, not the Navajo. And from the maps that I've seen of the ancient Navajo land, they did not reach up to Michigan or Wisconsin. But if I'm mistaken, someone please correct me. But actual Skinwalkers, werewolves is more of a European tradition, and my thought here is that why it's connected to the Native American legend is it's probably just a colonist or our own projection and assuming that all these people are one and the same. I didn't find any actual research doing that, but just reading it on my own, that's my assumption here.
Yeah, because the word for werewolf is loup-garou in French.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And actually, I found a very interesting video. It didn't quite relate to what I wanted to discuss here, but it is very interesting. I will link it down below, discussing the origin of the werewolf legend, how it relates to the Celtic and the Nordic people. We know this because anyone who's played an RPG, you've probably heard of the term berserker. That comes from a warrior who puts on the skin of a bear and attempts to take on a bear.
You mean a berserker?
He presented it berserker in his video. But yes, it's berserker, same thing. Takes on the skin of a bear to take on bear attributes, and people in the Nordic or Celtic region would do the same with wolves. And eventually that transformed into a wolf legend. I'm sorry, you can see my cat running around in the background. She has the zoomies. But yes, it's distinctly not it's not tied to the Native American legend. They are a skinwalker. It does not necessarily transform into a werewolf, and they are not cursed. They are someone who chooses to transform into an animal as well.
Are all you werewolves Indians?
Oh, here we go again.
Fucking Twilight?
No, we're not all Indians. In fact, well, I'm an Indian, but that's because my father's from India. I think you're not even talking about that kind of Indian, though. I think you're talking about a Native American like Marcus.
Yeah, but I'm not a werewolf because I'm Native American.
That's right.
All right, it's not an ethnic thing.
That's one guy.
We're all different.
I'm African American.
That's right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm Caribbean Canadian. Saskatoon, motherfucker.
That's right.
I'm Caucasian.
But yes, I just wanted to... that's all I'm going to say, because, again, it is a taboo subject. The research is out there if you would like it, but we are, not part of the Navajo Nation. So
not equipped to discuss.
Yeah, not equipped to discuss. But I kind of thought Skinwalkers would be a good transition because into our next topic, which is werewolves as part of the mental psyche, how people use werewolves as part of a sort of discussion about people's mentality and their psychoses, if you will. And so with that, we are going to start with the most famous werewolf movie, as well as its 2010 revival, or reboot, The Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, in our discussion, you and I will probably, go back and forth between the 1941 version and the 2010 version. They're very much the same plot with a few key differences. The premise of The Wolfman is a man named Larry Talbot. He is he's the second son of a wealthy man in a small village in England. He chose to leave his village and his father acknowledges this. His father acknowledges that he chose to leave because his older brother was going to inherit everything, become the master of the estate, and Larry would essentially be left with nothing. Larry was essentially unimportant. And it very distinctly sets up that Larry is isolated from this place. Even he and his father have a degree of separation. He always refers to his father, who is played by the legendary Claude Rains, the Invisible Man, and one of the incarnations of Phantom of the Opera, by the way. Yes. So they acknowledge that there is a degree of separation between the two of them, but they agree that they are going to try and mend fences. And Larry, throughout the movie, he only refers to his father as father or sir, until the final scene that they have together when he finally calls him dad. And I thought that was a distinct note to put there.
Yeah.
The movie starts off with a definition of lycanthropy. The main title reads, lycanthropy is a disease of the mind in which a human being imagines they are a wolfman. According to old legend, emphasis on legend, the victims actually assume the physical characteristics of an animal. And something that I thought was really cool about this film that you sometimes forget about the old Universal pictures, this is actually a very psychological film. Because this already gives us the impression that this transformation is just all in someone's head. Even though there are very distinct evidence, there's distinct evidence that there's a wolf present, but it's just, there's a lot of questioning of if there's actually a physical transformation, or if it's just all in someone's head.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a good marriage between the idea of science and myth. It's very clearly established that Larry's father, Sir John, is a man of science, but he does acknowledge that ancient legends do have some basis in fact. It's also thought that werewolfism is probably based on dual personality, or maybe it was an interpretation of schizophrenia, and it's real, quote unquote, because there's good and evil in every man's soul. And Larry himself uses this whole masquerade of science, of using science to kind of masquerade as magic. He uses his father's telescope to spy on this young woman named Gwen, and he goes up and approaches her and tries to charm her with creepy facts that I would find creepy if a stranger just knew these things about me, to just hit on her. And then he tells her that he's a psychic, but it works, and she agrees to go on a date with him after...
That's a horrible decision.
After he purchases a silver-headed wolf cane from her with a pentagram on it. And she explains the werewolf story further about how even a good man can transform into a werewolf, and they will see their next victim as a pentagram in the palm of their next victim's hand. Yes. So it's also distinct that every single person in the village knows this poem that she tells Larry, and Larry himself is completely unaware of it.
Even though he's from the village.
Yeah, he's from the village, but again, he is very much depicted as an outsider in this case. Also, I want to quickly jump to the 2010 version, because this cane has a distinct role in the movie. And at the end of the 2010 version, there's a zoom in on the cane and Hugo Weaving. There is a distinct zoom in on Hugo Weaving gripping his wound and holding this cane, and then there's a zoom in on the cane that he's holding. And in the original cut of the film, it's not necessarily described why. It doesn't really make sense. But if there is a deleted scene in the 2010 version where Larry, or Lawrence is what he's called in the 2010 version, Lawrence meets a man on the train, and the man explains that he had this cane specially made for him in Gévaudan, and he gives it to Lawrence. Mm-hmm. And Gévaudan, for any other cryptoid fans out there, there's a legend called the Beast of Gévaudan, which is another werewolf legend. So, again, silver cane made with a wolf head and a pentagram etched on the side. So Larry and Gwen go on their date, and Gwen's friend Jenny goes with them, and they go to this gypsy village to get their fortunes told. Larry and Gwen go off on their own, and Bela Lugosi appears and tells Jenny her fortune. Bela sees the character's name is also Bela. He sees a pentagram in Jenny's hand and just tells her to leave. And later, Larry and Gwen hear Jenny screaming, and Larry sees a wolf mauling Jen. So he uses his cane and beats the wolf to death, but he is bitten. When the police arrive, they see Bela's dead body, and his skull was crushed. But there is no body of a wolf. So Larry's immediately accused of murdering Bela, and when he tries to show them the bite mark that he had, it's gone. So he's immediately classified as, disturbed or with shock. A lot of people in town say, well, there was never a murder until that Larry Talbot arrives. Mm-hmm. And Gwen starts to suggest that maybe her story of the werewolf confused him, and he's like, but why is everyone else insisting that I'm the one who's confused? And his behavior is really scrutinized and overanalyzed by both the police and his father, with his father trying to explain it away by something rational, or saying, oh, he's just shocked, it's not his fault, he didn't actually do this, and the police overanalyzing it by saying, oh, this is proof that he's a murderer because he's just mentally disturbed. So Larry returns to this, there's this carnival, and the gypsies put on this carnival performance. Larry returns to it and sees Gwen there. But Maliva appears and gives him this pentagram and says, both versions are true. You killed a man and you killed a wolf. And the wolf was my son, Bela. And she gives him this charm and insists that he wears it. And Larry instead gives it to Gwen because he is convinced that he may hurt her one day. And we get our first transformation. Larry is just frantically inspecting himself. We just see tears in his eyes, and he's just seemingly just giving in because he's just exhausted. He's just frantically looking at himself and just giving into that he's becoming a werewolf. First transformation occurs, he goes and kills a gravedigger. And the police do confirm that the gravedigger was killed in the same way as Jenny, the previous victim. Larry's doctor really confirms that even if Larry doesn't want to be a werewolf, he can be very heavily influenced by suggestion or by the people around him. And this is something that his father really insists on. He says, it's not you. The gypsy woman just put this all in your head. That none of this would have happened if you hadn't gone to the gypsy village and just heard all these crazy things. And the doctor says, the doctor confirms that anyone can really be cured of a disease of the mind or anything with the cooperation. And yet the police are saying, no, the insane asylum is the only way. There is no cure for this.
Huh.
And then Larry transforms again, but he doesn't kill anyone. Instead, he is caught in a trap by the police and is rescued by Maliva. He returns back home and he tells his father everything, and Sir John insists there is nothing wrong with him, it's all in his head, so they both agree they will tie Larry up, lock all the doors and windows, and everything. And this is when Larry says, Dad, please take the cane with the silver head, just in case. Just in case. So Sir John goes out with the hunting party, and he runs into Maliva, and Gwen also goes running out with the hunting party looking for Larry. Larry escapes from his bonds, and he stalks and attacks Gwen. Sir John comes across the scene, and he beats his son to death with the cane, and finally, in death, Larry transforms back into his human form, and the police arrive. Sir John is just staring at the body of his son. And it ends quite abruptly with the police saying the wolf must have attacked Gwen, and Larry came to the rescue. Yeah, but I'm very glad. I wanted to say I really enjoyed the 2010 reboot. Actually,
I do too, actually.
I think it was a very well done movie. I'm glad that they used practical effects for the wolf. I think it's a very good example of Victorian Gothic horror, and just the atmosphere as well was lovely. And it knows what it is. You know, it's a Gothic movie. Right. I mean, the title scene is the tombstone with the wolfman and the blood dripping down. You know exactly what you're getting into.
Right, exactly.
I'm glad that they changed it from, you know, being a gypsy, something that was infected by the gypsies, by saying, "Ooh, these dirty foreigners coming in and infecting."
Like the xenophobia.
Yeah, the xenophobia. I don't think that the xenophobia was quite there because they did a very good job, like portraying Maleva in a very positive light. Like, she's not an evil character; she's a very neutral character. But yeah, I'm very glad that they changed it to actually Anthony Hopkins, Lawrence's father, Sir John, being the werewolf. I also think it's probably more symbolic of grief and guilt because they don't really explore the death of Larry's brother in the original movie. That's why he returns to the village, is because his brother died and therefore he now is the heir of the estate. They kind of gloss over that after the first scene that he had a brother. Mm-hmm. And also his mother is never mentioned. But in the 2010 reboot, you know, he sees the body of his brother, and then after that is when, you know, he gets bitten. And then also it's very prominent that he's, you know, very affected by the death of his mother. And it's just you can see a lot of victim blaming as well. It's quite rampant in the movie. And to me, that seems more of a metaphor of grief and guilt. Also, I want to point out that Charlie Chaplin's daughter is in this movie. She plays Maleva. She plays Maleva.
Oh!
Yeah, it's Charlie Chaplin's daughter.
That's cool.
I think it's very cool. And now, we're going to what has been described as one of the best werewolf transformations in cinema. An American Werewolf in London.
You saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. Blue.
I do want to insert a trigger warning here. We probably will at the beginning, you know, because we are talking about, you know, we are touching on things that deal with mental health issues and also Native American lore. But here is where I especially want to insert a trigger warning, because this deals a lot with survivor's guilt and also suicidal ideation. So we'll just go ahead and insert a timestamp when you can skip over that completely. Now, this movie, An American Werewolf in London, was written and directed by John Landis, who we know from Animal House and the Blues Brothers. And he actually wrote this movie more than a decade before it came out, but he kept it on hold because he wanted to wait until he established himself as a director so he could get the budget to make it. Mm-hmm. And as the story goes, there are two American backpackers, David and Jack, who are attacked while walking on these big moors or these big wide fields by a werewolf. David runs away while the werewolf kills Jack. He abandons his friend to be killed while his friend is being attacked by the werewolf. But he is still bitten. He survives and ends up in a hospital a few weeks later, and the main bulk of the movie is him being haunted by these images of Jack, and Jack is slowly decaying he's decaying more and more every time we see him. By the last time we see him, he's basically just a skull.
Oh.
So these images of Jack, he's haunted by these images of Jack telling him that Jack is stuck in purgatory, and he'll be stuck in purgatory and never move on until David dies. And he also confirms that David will transform into a werewolf.
Who confirms?
Jack.
Ah.
The dead friend.
Okay.
So there are only two actual werewolf transformations in this movie. If you're expecting this to be a big action movie, it's not. It's more about David just waiting for this to happen to him and just him seeing these images and being haunted by his friend most of the time and having these conversations with his dead friend most of the time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ah! You're not real.
Oh, don't be a putz, David.
A lot of people would run away if they're seeing a giant animal just killing their friend. You know, not everyone is going to be a hero.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody knows how they'll react, but I can certainly understand feeling guilty about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You always will think, what could I have done? Could I have done something else?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing with survivor's guilt. It's like, I lived when this other person or other people did not.
Yeah, I should not have lived when this other person died.
Right.
Yeah. So during the first transformation, which is considered the most iconic werewolf transformation in cinema because of how wonderful it just comes, it's just painful, and you can just hear him just screaming in agony and moaning in agony, and you can just hear bones cracking and just everything just stretching and ripping into a proportion of his body that it's not meant to be. It's just all of his agony is finally cultivating into this one moment. And he goes out and he kills people. And then the next part of the movie is him waiting till the next full moon. And this time it's not just Jack that he sees. It's all the dead people.
Oh, man.
It's all the people that he has killed. And the worst part is they all... And this is why I wanted to insert the trigger warning. They all start making suggestions of how he can kill himself. Because they're all stuck in his mind, they're all stuck in purgatory until he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, oh, if you do this, then we can all be free. We'll all be free. And the second transformation happens, and it's a very abrupt ending, actually. You start to think that this lady friend that he has made in the film, she just runs up toward him, and you think that, love is going to save the day, and he will just see her, and his eyes will soften. And you do see the eyes start to soften, and you think that, she's getting through to him, and then he's gunned down by police. And that's it. There's no explained meaning behind the attack or the curse, though any explanation of the curse just goes nowhere, or it just leads to a bunch of dead ends. There's just no explanation behind it at all.
Sorry, putting on eyeliner. That's sad.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and it does contain some comedy elements because it is a John Landis film, but yeah, it is mostly... And some reviewers have said that felt a bit out of place to them, but then again, some people cope with humor or jokes as well. So, yeah. That's An American Werewolf in London.
Man, what a sad story.
It is a very sad story, but it's also a lovely story, I think, in how almost realistically it portrays just the grief that he goes through. And then it manifests itself physically.
Mm-hmm.
That's my takeaway from it as well. But now, we're going to move on to maybe some lesser-known werewolf movies, ones that also might deserve some recognition. And the first one is Where.
What's that?
Now, Where is also a bit of a bait and switch. Some people have described it as closer to Predator, the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, because it starts off as a crime drama, but turns into a slasher part of the way through. So the protagonist of this movie is a lawyer who is responsible for defending a man named Talon who murdered an American family vacationing in France. And the whole first part of the movie is her just researching Talon and what happened, and then the defense team we know if you know it's a werewolf film, you know that these are hinting towards werewolfism, but if you are looking at this as a realistic, reasonable person, then you can brush a lot of the evidence they find off. So they are trying to prove that he has a disease that caused him to commit a crime. So they're using the, reason of insanity, basically.
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
Not guilty by reason of insanity, which you would probably know better, but also this takes place in France, so the laws might be a little bit different. They use a questionable medical procedure to try to trigger this supposed unnamed disease they think he has. And to me, it looked very much like Clockwork Orange, where they pin his eyes wide open. But instead, they try to induce him into having a seizure, is what they're trying to do. They have his eyes wide open, and they're flashing a bright light in front of his face. But these actually provoke his transformation. So Talon starts going on a murderous rampage, and this is when the switch happens. It's also revealed when interviewing Talon's mother that lycanthropy is hereditary and passed down from the men in Talon's family. Talon also intentionally bites a member of the defense team named Gavin, and at the end of the film, when they are finally chasing Talon around, it's revealed that Gavin has been, shaving himself as he's seeing this transformation happening on his own, and a bald but transformed Gavin fights a hairy and primal Talon, and they end up killing each other. Wow. So Gavin, who denied his werewolf... It was very similar to what I thought was in the 2010 version of The Wolfman, where you see Anthony Hopkins, he's ripped off his shirt, and he's just being, full bestial primal mode, and then Lawrence, Benicio del Toro's character, he still has his clothes on, and he's still got some semblance of humanity back in him. And now we are going to move to Spain. So, Emily, I don't know if when you were studying abroad in Spain, have you ever heard of Roma Santa?
No, I have not.
Well, this next movie is El Bosque del Lobo, or Roma Santa, and it stars Elsa Pataky. Now, the movie itself is more of a romantic horror, is how I would describe it. I'm going to actually talk about the real Roma Santa because I find his story to be a bit more, on point with what we're discussing today. So, Manuel Blanco Roma Santa is the first registered serial killer in Spain, and the only registered case of lycanthropy in Spain. Oh. So his story is that he killed women and children. He would lead women, and he would tell people that he knew these obscure paths through the woods that were shortcuts or something like that. And he would kill women and children and sell their fat as soap. And he would also sell their other belongings that he took from their bodies. So that's how people caught on to what he was doing.
Ah.
Mm-hmm. Fight Club.
I know, I was going to say, Brad Pitt?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Roma Santa and why I wanted to talk about maybe, I guess, look into why he picked werewolfism of all things, is that he was actually raised as a girl until he was 8 years old. It was found that he had female genitalia, but his body produced an excess of testosterone.
Oh, so this is, yeah, I've heard of these cases, like that intersex or middle sex.
Yeah, so he was first identified as a girl, and then when he was about 6 or 8 years old, I've mostly heard 8, but I've also heard some people say 6, a doctor re-identified him as a boy. He was renamed Manuel, and actually after that, his life got better. He was treated much better by his family. He received better education because he was a boy.
Of course.
Of course he did. So, again, he... did get married, but his wife passed away, and then he took a job as a traveling salesman. He would offer women and children assistance, guiding them through unknown roads, but they would never be seen again. And he would write letters to their families saying, "Oh, we made it. It's fine." But then he was eventually caught because he would sell the clothes that the women and children were wearing. And people were like, this is, yeah. So, during trial, he admitted to killing 9 people, but 17 victims were attributed to him. And it's during the trial that he said he was cursed with werewolfism. But then when he was asked if he could transform to prove this defense true, he said, "Oh, but my curse was lifted before you arrested me, so I can never transform again." So the case was actually escalated to the Supreme Court, and Queen Isabella II actually agreed that Roma Santa should be studied scientifically, and she sentenced him to life in prison rather than death.
The Queen did?
Yes.
When was this?
This was...
Also, I don't know if y'all can see me. I have no idea how I'm doing, but I don't know if I should keep going.
I think you look great.
Should I keep going?
I think you should. Okay, so he was arrested in 1852.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes, that is Roma Santa. But other cases that I wanted to talk about were people, the use of psychiatry or psychology just being used to take advantage of people. That's also something that I noticed in some werewolf films that I've researched.
Oh yeah.
One is She-Wolf of London, which is supposedly a sequel to Werewolf of London, which is no association with the song whatsoever. Yeah, so the She-Wolf of London, it takes place, of course, in England. The story is a wealthy woman. She becomes convinced that she is transforming into a werewolf and murdering people, but it's actually revealed that her aunt and cousin, who are living in this mansion and living off of her fortune with her, are actually the ones committing the murders and convincing her that she is the one responsible, so that she will become insane and they will take control of her fortune. Another one is I Was a Teenage Werewolf. This is a teenage boy with anger issues who is taken advantage of by his psychiatrist, who decides to use his anger to transform him into a werewolf and carry out his own experiments on them.
That's dirty.
It is really dirty. That came out in 1957 as well. But the next one I want to mention is a much more famous one, which I think is probably one of the more famous recent werewolf movies, and that is The Howling. And this one I think has a much more obvious theme to the trauma imposed on the characters than some of the other ones that I mentioned. So the main protagonist is a journalist named Karen. She is stalked by a serial killer named Eddie Quist. She agrees with the police to trap Eddie. He leads her to a porn house, and it's sort of implied, but you wouldn't, unless you knew that this was a werewolf movie, you wouldn't know.
I want to give you something.
But in the dark, he starts to transform, but she sees the police burst in, shoot, and kill him. She's traumatized, has nightmares, and her doctor suggests a retreat for her in the form of a colony that he is running with other people with similar mental health issues.
Nope.
The trauma, of course, follows her, and it's revealed that everyone there, including her doctor, is actually a werewolf.
Nope.
So, actually, anyway, but getting more into the nitty-gritty details, Karen, it's revealed that, the trauma that Karen suffered after seeing Eddie get murdered, it's affecting her relationship with her husband. He starts pushing her away whenever she tries to have some sort of intimacy with him. And while at the retreat, he is also attacked by a werewolf, and he later cheats on Karen with another woman. And that's when the first transformation actually appeared. It's also revealed later on that the woman he cheats on her with is Eddie's sister, Marcia. It's revealed later on that Eddie Quist never actually died. He came back to... You cannot kill a werewolf simply by gunning them down. You need silver or fire to kill them, apparently. And also, like in the Skinwalkers movie, there's a bit of a divide between the werewolves. The doctor is one of the good werewolves who wants to control his animal instincts, and the others, like Marcia, just enjoy them. So, Karen eventually escapes, but she is bitten by her husband. And later on TV, she goes on TV with her friend to report on the colony being burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her friend agree that no one is going to believe this story unless she proves it to them firsthand. So on live television, she transforms into a werewolf. And then, as planned, her friend shoots her with a silver bullet. And it cuts to the public's response to her transformation on set, and no one believes her.
That's horrible.
No one believes her. It's very nonchalant. Nobody takes it seriously.
So she just shot her friend on set for no reason.
Her friend was a man, yes. Karen was shot for no reason. Karen was shot and died for no reason.
That's stupid.
But I did think let's bring up some honorable mentions. There were quite a few werewolf movies that I saw that didn't quite fit into what I wanted to talk, that didn't quite fit in, but I thought were still worth discussing.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is Dog Soldiers. This is actually a very well-received werewolf movie, even though it is low budget. It's very well-received. This is a British film. A group of military men are sent on an exercise with a special ops unit in the Highlands of Scotland and are attacked by werewolves. Another critically acclaimed one is Ginger Snaps. This is actually a very well-praised movie that has obtained a cult following, and people say that poor marketing in America is why it's not more widely known. This is a Canadian film. This is praised because it is written by a woman, and it depicts a more accurate representation of teenage girls and their actual relationship with each other.
Yeah.
It's about two sisters. Ginger is the older one. She is bitten by a werewolf on the night of her first period. And it's shown that the two sisters are incredibly close and they love each other, but after this happens, there is a bit of an awkward divide because one is going through a transformation and that the other one just simply doesn't understand. It's praised as used as a metaphor for a change that happens for when a girl hits puberty, and Ginger actually seems to enjoy the changes that come with transforming into a werewolf, but more importantly, these girls are just really close and loving with each other, and just these differences that's divided the two of them just is more revealed as awkward and as just another mental divide that one just can't understand.
Yeah.
Another one that's not as good, well, we're going to get into the last two. One that is not as good is The Beast Must Die. I wanted to include this one because it has Peter Cushing, Blofeld from James Bond, and King Willie from Predator 2 as a star. This is a sort of the Most Dangerous Game type ripoff. Not a ripoff, but it takes inspiration from The Most Dangerous Game. A wealthy man, played by King Willie, invites a bunch of people that he suspects are werewolves to his island because he wants to hunt them, and he wants to figure out which one it is and hunt them down because he is an acclaimed hunter. This movie has several plot holes, but essentially, including one like right before the ending, there is a wolf check or a wolf timer where it pauses in a very castle-like movement. It says, "Here are the suspects. Who do you believe is the werewolf?"
Which one? 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 Which one?
One of these 8 people will turn into a werewolf.
So it sounded like it was a really great concept, but it just wasn't executed well. And of course, in the end, the King Willie gets transformed into the thing that he was hunting. So it's like pride is your downfall, I guess. The last one I want to discuss is Bad Moon. And I only wanted to include this because of one thing, but I'll get to that after. So this is about a man who is researching out in the jungle when he's attacked. He returns home to live with his sister and try to deal with this trauma that he's been going through, and the family dog, Thor, who is the goodest boy ever, realizes the threat, and it's basically Thor is the protagonist of the story, and he's on a mission to protect his family from the werewolf. Even despite Thor being blamed for a lot of the werewolf attacks, and the brother just slowly, the uncle, is just slowly degrading and becoming more animal-like. Thor is put in the pound, but he escapes, and he attacks the werewolf and saves his family. But yeah, the goodest. I just wanted to include it because Thor just sounded like the goodest boy ever.
Good boy, Thor.
Yeah, good boy, Thor. But yeah, that's werewolves in film. So Emily, do you have your final product reveal?
I do. It's been revealed.
Oh, it's been revealed. I'm not sure how long I've been ranting.
I've been waiting.
I can't see her right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Got my teeth in. Got my not so hairy face. I tried really hard. My plan was to be darker than this, but I'm like, you can't really see it on camera very well, but...
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this before. When you've got the ring light, like, you have to put on so much makeup for it to be visible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, can you send me a picture of the final product so I can react?
All right, here you go.
Hey, that looks good!
It looks different in the picture than it does because I got my ring light up here and yeah, but whatever.
No, that's okay. I really like what you did with the eyes and nose particularly. I think that looks really well done.
Thank you.
I like it a lot. Good job, Em.
Thank you, Amanda.
We've never done well, this is also our first attempt at, well, your first attempt. I don't do makeup very much, but yeah, this is your first attempt at doing like a really heavy makeup look.
Yeah. I mean, I like wearing makeup, so it's fun.
Yeah,
I would
this is
if I
good.
had the time and the money and the inclination, I would have more stuff. However,
That's okay. It still works.
all right, and of course there are more. Like I remember, there's like one called Howl, I think, which is like a one with the actor from Aragon. Aragon, yeah.
Yeah, but if you have any other werewolf movies that you like or you think I missed, I did have a whole long list, but I just could not fit all of them into this video. It would just have been too much. But yeah, if you have any more, just put them down in the comment section below. Let us know what you think of these videos, if you agree with my interpretation of the movies or not. We love a discussion and we love learning. So
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let us know what you thought about this video. Do you like these kind of sit-down, talky videos? Let us know in the comment section down below. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed already. And until next time, I'm Emily.
And I'm Amanda.
We're Amandem, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!
Bye!
I look so silly!
No, you don't!